Welcome to the No Guilt Fangirls Podcast, where liking what you like is never a bad thing. Here's your host and head fangirl in charge, Patty Holiday.
Hey y'all, I'm your host and head fangirl in charge, Patty Holiday. Welcome to the No Guilt Fangirls Podcast. Or for the next couple of weeks, we're just going to go ahead and call this the Loki Fangirl Podcast because that's what is taking over this entire podcast for the next couple of weeks. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson, the writing, the directing, we are fangirling all of it because it's amazing. Yes?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Oh,
sorry. I'm
yes.
sitting here still like bursting.
On the episode with me today are Julia and Ashely, both of which, if you are listening to this podcast fairly regularly, you should be familiar with. Julia fangirled Tom Hiddleston with me a couple of years ago, and then I brought her back last week when Loki dropped. She is who I like to call Loki's number one fan. She is just really passionate about this character and passionate about Tom Hiddleston in general. Ashely, as you guys all know, is our comic book geeky expert. She's going to touch base on a few things that we probably missed if we're just, I say just with air quotes, just MCU fans, which that's me. I've maybe read 2 comic books in my entire life. They're just not my jam. However, I love the MCU. And so I love when Ashely is willing to explain things to me, because I also love how these shows and these movies are kind of pulling things in from comics and giving that nod and that fan love to the big dorks out there who are just dying to see some of their favorite comic book stories come to life. And that's what we're getting, right? Maybe. I don't know. I'll let Ashely kind of explain what we saw at the end of this episode, because there was something that I was like, who is that? And I see Ashley's laughing at me. She's like, what do you mean? Who is that? So here we go. We're going to jump in with this. First of all, Ashely, say hi, tell people where they can find you. And then Julia, you introduce yourself as well. And then we'll go.
All right.
Hey friends, it's Ashely. You can find me on my website with ashleyandco.com, on Twitter at thatashleyaaron, at cbr.com, as well as my own podcast, Geek Girls Universe.
Ooh, that's a tough act to follow. Hey guys, I'm Julia. Hello to all my Loki stands today. If you've seen the episode, you're all bubbling, I know, but you can find me on the socials. I'm not cool enough to have my own podcast or website. You can find me on Instagram at Queenie11078, and same handle applies to Twitter. So basically, if you just search the hashtag Loki, you'll probably find me somewhere on.
Pretty much.
Webs.
Yeah, pretty
He's
much.
my
Because
man.
he's your man. He's your dude. All right. So let's jump in with this one. Ashely, take it away.
All right. I'm excited. And I remember last week, before we started recording, you mentioned about the end of this episode going, oh, I didn't know who that was.
I'm excited to admit that I did know who that was. I was so excited. And so I let out a scream.
Look at you. Yeah, I didn't. And I was like, oh, who's this? Ashely will know. I'll catch up with Ashely later. So, yes.
All right. So the TVA has tracked our variant to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 1985 at a Renaissance fair. And just as the Minutemen encounter the variant, they are quickly taken out as per usual. Clearly, this evil Loki is very powerful. They use the power of enchantment to control the head of the Minutemen, Hunter C-70, who kind of helps take out the group. And then the variant leaves with the Hunter, which is new, apparently.
Yeah, and the Hunter does this to one of the most epic soundtracks ever.
Oh my God.
I Need a Hero.
Yeah, it was so great. Yeah. Love the song. Love how they tied that in. It was pretty hilarious. Did not love how the variant is actually killing these Minutemen.
No.
Didn't love that, but everything else, was kind of a cool scene. And yeah, so they drag her off, which is a new step in this whole situation. We haven't seen that before.
No, it's new. So they're a little concerned about why the variant is now taking hostages. Back at the TVA, Loki gets his super cool variant jacket, which he obviously shows off in Loki fashion with that like snarky shrug like, hey, look at me. And we also learn that no two Lokis are alike. There's been a lot of Lokis that the TVA has pruned off the timeline, to which Loki kind of is like, really, guys? You're just like taking me out left and right? Cool. Okay.
Now, stop for a second here and kind of explain this to me, because initially I thought Loki was Loki. Like, I thought that was his name. That is him. There's only one Loki. Like, what do you mean there's multiple Lokis? And now it appears that Loki is, I don't know what, a being, what is Loki? Like, why are there so many Lokis out there? And also, was that the cycling, was that Lance Armstrong Loki?
It very well could be Lance Armstrong Loki.
It was like the yellow jersey with the, I was like, what is that?
What's funny is that picture, somebody on Twitter this morning posted it, and there were pictures that, like, press photos or paparazzi or whatever, that had been taken of him when they were filming. And the expression on his face is very similar to one of the picture that they have of him standing outside of the set wearing like the all black Loki suit. So it's almost like they superimposed that head onto the Lance Armstrong outfit.
Onto the Lance Armstrong outfit. I was just like, what is going on here? All right. Anyway, so yeah, explain this to me.
Okay, so the way they're kind of going about it is almost a play on variants in comics. So depending on which Earth we're on or which run of the comics we're in, there can be different versions of the characters. Kind of like Lady Thor, right? We know Jane Foster is going to wield Mjolnir in Love and Thunder, making her Lady Thor. So it's like a version of the character, but she's a separate person. Loki, on the other hand, he can shapeshift. He can duplicate himself. He's special. Okay. So it's as much a play on the different comic book runs as it's also on various comic book covers. You know, you'll see where it's like, oh, this one's special because it's a variant cover. And I guess there's just so many Lokis because he's so mischievous. But we don't know if these are all in the same timeline, Earth 616, or not.
Okay.
Because they just are like, we're pruning Lokis left and right because there's so many of them. I hope they'll explain if it's like Lokis from multiple timelines or alternate realities. Like when Loki steps off the path, it kind of creates another version of himself. So we'll see.
Like the idea of multiple Lokis running around, not gonna lie. I mean, they all look like Tom. That would be good.
That would be good. That would be all right.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Okay, all right. I just needed a pause there to kind of get an explanation as to, I mean, I get, and it seems to be accepted, and Loki was like, well, yes, but I'm the best Loki, you know, and I mean, right. But I didn't hear him say like, I'm the original Loki or I'm the real Loki or anything. So I assume that like he's accepted or he recognizes or he knows that there's multiple Lokis out there. Like this isn't weird to anybody but me. So, okay, carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. Loki does not seem super surprised by any of it. So.
Yeah.
So Mobius does let them know that while no two Loki look alike, they all have similar powers. And that's, you know, shape-shifting, mind control, illusion projecting, which Loki corrects him. He's like, well, you know, duplication, it's different. And it's
hilarious. I like that.
He got a Loki lecture sort of in the middle of this week's episode.
Yeah. So when I got the chance to interview the cast of Loki, and they were discussing the Loki lectures and Loki school that Tom did, and that how it worked its way into the script in certain parts. So this is definitely one of those parts where they worked that into the show itself, which I thought was super cool to see. They take Loki, our Loki. So this is where we got to start like differentiating, right? So our Loki goes with the TVA to 1985 to try to trap the bad Loki because the bad Loki's still out there. However, our Loki has some plans. Not that should be surprising. And he stalls the TVA so that the other Loki can get away. Mobius sees it for what it is, though. And he still believes that our Loki is the key to catching this other bad Loki. Despite Renslayer being like, really? Like, this guy just screwed up this op. Are you sure? And Mobius is like, yes, I promise. And, Mobius and Loki kind of have this like back and forth, and Mobius is like, look, I don't care what what makes you sleep better at night, essentially. I just need you to do what I have you doing. Like, what I saved your life for is what you need to do. Yeah. Mobius puts him to work, which is hysterical. Loki's like, work? Really? I'm a god. You don't put me to work.
Well, and it was so funny because, I loved this vision of him like sitting at a desk reading stuff. And at first, of course, he's acting like he blew it all off. But as this episode goes on, you see he actually paid attention. He read, he knows things. And as he reminded us, I am smart.
Exactly.
Well, and can we back up to the very beginning where he and Miss Minutes had a moment? Because I'm still laughing about that.
Yeah.
The Miss Minutes, Miss Minutes is adorable, and where she's like trying to, test him on things, and he's just sees her as an annoyance or something. I'm not sure what he's doing with her, but it was
obstinate. It was great.
It was funny, and then he starts swatting her with a jet ski magazine.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're using her, but they're not overusing her.
Right.
Because she would clearly get annoying if she was used too much, but like they're just doing just the right amount, I think.
I think I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, so Loki is put to work, right? He's got all these files on the variant Loki, and Mobius says, comb through this, see if there's anything we missed, use your Lokiism and figure it out. Loki, of course, is like, well, I'm going to go see what other files I can pull. So he goes to this woman who, I don't know, she reminds me of like, we just watched Monsters University with the kids last night. She reminds me of like the monster librarian they have to escape in that movie. Because she's just like, what? Loki's like, so, can I get a file on the TVA formation? No. Beginning of time? Mm-mm. End of time? Yeah, no. All of that is classified. What can I get a file on? He gets a file on himself. That's all he can have. But it's interesting because this is where Loki figures out what's going on. In his file is included the unauthorized time violation, which is why he's at the TVA. It also includes the destruction of Asgard, which, if we're remembering where we are in the MCU timeline, it hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
And there's a lot of interesting pieces in the file. We learned that Ragnarok was a Class 7 apocalypse, total planetary destruction. The code name was Revengers, which made me laugh because, obviously that was Thor's super creative team name, right? We're not copying anybody that we know at all. But the most important piece that Loki got from that was the zero variance energy detected. So when variants do bad things on the timeline, they give off energy. It's how the TVA tracks them. However, he has a theory that by hiding in apocalypses, because the whole place is about to implode anyway, what they do doesn't matter, and therefore they can kind of play hide and seek, right? And their energy is, covered by the apocalypse that happens. He, of course, explains this in a terrible metaphor with poor Mobius's salad with like salt and Boku juice. It was sad. I was like, oh, he was just trying to eat his lunch. So Mobius is like, all right, well, I guess we'll test this theory. And of course, Loki's like, take me to Asgard, where Ragnarok happened. Mobius is like, no, not taking you to your homeland. I'm not that stupid. Thanks for trying, though. So they go to Pompeii, Italy, moments before Mount Vesuvius erupts and wipes out everyone. Now, Mobius is like, hey, let's start small, make some bird noises or something. Loki goes full god of mischief, like jumps up, releases the goats, starts like screaming, like, I'm from the future and you're all gonna die. It's great. Eat up. Go do stuff.
This
Mobius
is one of like the very Loki responses I think that we've seen. Like this again. Remember Loki 2012, right? He's still quote unquote the bad guy Loki, and he was just taking such joy in the fact that destruction and mayhem was about to rain down on these people, and that he was proving himself right at the same time. Like, this was just such a, like, sadly pure Loki moment. You know what I mean? It was
peak Loki 2012.
It really, really was. And I giggled the entire time, especially like at the end where he like smiles and puts his arms out like, see?
Yes. Like, yes, it's erupting. Look. Yeah, Mobius was totally a parent the whole time, like face in hand, like, oh my God, this kid, why?
Right.
But Loki's theory was proved correct. So despite the chaos he just caused, there was no variant energy detected because Pompeii was wiped out. So they have a discussion back at the TVA. I kind of have a theory that Mobius knows that there's something a little sus about the TVA and the Timekeepers, and Loki's kind of like poking at that in this discussion, like, are you sure you believe all this? I mean, really? Are you sure? But regardless of that conversation, Mobius has an epiphany, like, hey, that kablooey gum, it was only manufactured during a certain amount of time. And let's cross-reference that with every known apocalypse, which apparently there were a lot of apocalyptic events that happened between the years 2047 and 2051. Loki finds exactly when and where the variant is hiding. It's a corporate town owned by Roxcart in Haven Hills, Alabama, 2050. A Class 10 apocalypse is about to happen. And for comic book fans, and I guess they are in the MCU too, so if you've paid attention, Roxcart is a nod to Roxxon Corporation, which is a super evil conglomerate of baddies. So I was like, yay, Roxcart. I know that.
Yeah, I don't know that, but okay.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so it was actually more prominent in Cloak and Dagger, but I believe it was also mentioned in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Iron Man as well.
Got it.
They're like rampant in the comics. So, yeah, anyways, nerd moment. The TVA and Loki arrive. Loki uses his magic to dry off, which is the first time we've seen him use it. So I just like it because I'm like, they're making you aware that he can use it when he's not in the TVA. And we all know Loki loves to use his magic. Now, while they're deciding what to do and splitting off into groups, the bad Loki's watching on security cameras, and using the power of enchantment, bad Loki talks to Loki. They possess a man in the greenhouse. And while Loki, it doesn't think that could be him, he's like, well, whatever. It's kind of weird, right? This guy's trying to buy azaleas in the middle of a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's a little weird. So Hunter B-15 walks up to him, and he, being controlled by the bad Loki, transfers using the enchantment. So you'll see the green, like fingers light up and the green eyes. The enchantment switches from him to her. So then B-15 is now the Loki, and they have a conversation. Loki tells the bad Loki, hey, I want your help. Let's overthrow the Timekeepers. Let's take over the universe. Let's work together. Bad Loki doesn't seem to care too much about our Loki's plans. The hostage from earlier is found by Mobius. She's like muttering to herself. She's told the bad Loki where to find the Timekeepers, which I guess is a huge no-no. But I'm also a little surprised that random people like the Hunters would know where they are. Like, I feel like they would keep that a little bit more secret. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. So Loki is fighting the other Loki. So the bad Loki has now transferred from Hunter B-15 to this big guy, who then transfers to another guy. It's like they're all over the place fighting.
Yeah. So Loki is like seeing, and the comment is, oh, now I get why Thor hated this, or why.
Yes, like, oh, you're so annoying.
Yeah, I did like that.
Yeah, because he's like, just tell me what you want. And, of course, Loki being Loki, right? He doesn't give a straight answer. And so, yeah, that's when he's like, oh, no wonder, like, everybody hates this about me. So finally, the bad Loki reveals themselves. And it is, in fact, Lady Loki, who is a super awesome comic variant of our Loki.
Wait, can we back up for a second though? Because I in the credit scenes, it says that her name is Sylvie, not the Lady Loki. So are they?
I was just reading this on Twitter. Yeah, Julia. I was just reading this on Twitter. Somebody's like, hold up. It's not Lady Loki. Yeah. Which again doesn't make any sense to me because I don't know the difference. However, the comic book people were all freaking out over this and they were saying, oh, Sylvie's so smart. She pretended to be Lady Loki to get Loki. And I'm like, what does any of that mean? This is part of the problem with like reading Twitter while you're trying to follow these shows. So any comments on that knowledge or that information that they're talking about?
So I think Marvel hasn't confirmed it's Lady Loki.
Okay.
There's been rumors that it could be Enchantress, who's another obviously bad girl, and the fact that he kept using the word enchantment has floated around. However, the TVA saying, hey, it's a Loki variant, I don't think they're stupid, right? Not that stupid anyway. I think it's just kind of like a red herring, like Mephisto was for WandaVision.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering is like, we got to remember this is still the MCU, and the MCU, while they want to give nods and touches and whatever to comic books, they want to make it something that like somebody like me and maybe somebody like Julia can follow easily, right? And so a Lady Loki, I can follow like that path of that train of thought. That when you start adding in all these like the Enchantress and Sylvie and whatever, I'm like, what? Like you lost me, right? So I'm kind of leaning towards that as well, is that as much as yes, they could have gone in those kind of crazy comic book directions. Maybe they're playing more towards the MCU type fan, the basic fan who doesn't get into all those depths and different levels of things. And therefore it isn't going to be anything other than a Lady Loki, like period.
Right.
Like that's what we're going to get.
To not be like too nerdy, the Enchantress, so she looks more like Enchantress because she has blonde hair and not black hair like Loki. And Sylvia is the name of technically the second Enchantress. It's complicated. You know how comics are. They're weird. Mm-hmm. And yes, like Sylvia is given powers by Loki, but considering that unless we come across another Loki that has created her, then I don't know. Like I lean towards Lady Loki simply because the show is about him and it's about the variant Lokis. Like there's the rumor there's a kid Loki and King Loki. So, and then the whole like vote for Loki, that's another comic run, like President Loki. So, I mean, like, yes, it could be Enchantress or it's just Lady Loki and they're doing kind of a blend of the two characters. Mm-hmm. Like the MCU Valkyrie is not the comic book Valkyrie.
Right.
In fact, it's the comic book Valkyrie that we see dying for our MCU Valkyrie in that flashback in Ragnarok.
Okay. All right.
Because Valkyrie was blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever, Norse, not looking like our Valkyrie. So, yeah, I'm a little hesitant to be like, it's Enchantress. I think that they might combine the two characters because, like you said, Lady Loki is far easier for people to follow than like, oh, yeah, well, there's a Enchantress, but it's not the first Enchantress. It's the second one, and Loki created her. I feel like it's a little complicated to get into.
Right.
Next, 4 episodes? So.
Well, and exactly. We've only got 4 episodes here. So that's where I'm leaning toward, like, pump the brakes on all this fun stuff that we see on Twitter. Well, yeah, that's cool and whatever. And who knows? Maybe Marvel is like, you guys will catch up. It'll be fine. You'll get this. Maybe they will. But as I learned from WandaVision.
Well, I only held on to that theory because of what the credits said.
Yes, right. I saw that too.
I thought that was interesting that they named her, and I was like, oh, okay. Because I fully expected it to say, well, I mean, I don't even know, right? Like, outside of Lady Loki, does she have a different name in the comics that
I mean,
Because
she's got other aliases, but her name is Lady Loki because
yeah, right. So
complicated, right?
Yeah.
She originally appeared because Loki was reincarnated into a female body that was meant for Lady Sif, and that's how the first Lady Loki came about after the events of Ragnarok. Eventually, I just actually wrote this whole article for CBR about Lady Loki, so that's why I'm like, all right, I'm up to date.
Okay, I'll link that in here for anybody that wants to read that as well. But
yes.
So speaking of that, though, in Ragnarok, did we get confirmation or was that in Dark World? Is Lady Sif, did we get confirmation of her death, or was this nobody knows what happened to Lady Sif? Like, they just didn't, I can't remember what
as far as I know, Taika confirmed she was alive, and I believe she was in Atlanta filming for something. So she's still around.
Okay, so yeah.
She's the only one out of like the warriors that survived.
That's what I kind of had in my head, but I wasn't 1,000%, so I wanted confirmation on that. Okay, so interesting, right? Julia, overall, what was your big aha moments? What was your big takeaways in this? What questions might you have for Ashely, if any?
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. I really just loved this particular episode because of the development between Loki and Mobius.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought it was very interesting and endearing, the scene where he's asleep on his desk, that he actually trusted where he was enough to fall asleep. I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird. Like, I don't know if that was, him being, I don't know. I just thought that was cool. And I thought, I'm really curious to know more and wonder if they'll come back to Mobius's obsession with jet skis. I really hope there's a jet ski at the end.
Well, and spoiler alerts, like, of course, I read Twitter and whatever, and I just saw somebody saying, hey, fam, don't get too attached to Mobius. I believe that he's going to die. Yeah. So I don't know if he is or not, but then I was like, well, at least have him like ride off, into the sunset on a jet ski, like do something for us, like something cheesy and whatever. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I want the jet ski obsession to come back in some way, shape, or form. Just because we're dorks like that. Yes.
I feel like it will. Like, they spent too much time on it for it to be random.
I think that's what it is too, is again.
It was really cute. And then I really hope that we get more about, I don't know. I just, the whole episode was just, there was so much like plot and development that happened in this episode that I really want to go back and watch it a couple more times tonight.
Yeah.
I feel like I missed a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I know that I was paying full attention to it, but, and I also want to go back down to the Marriott Marquis. Like, I've stayed there before, which is apparently where the TVA is, quote unquote. And if you're ever in Atlanta and want to go there, they have an awesome tiki bar in there that's really, really good. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, the comedic stuff with the seriousness of what's happening. Like, where are they going through that door next? I'm dying to know.
Right.
Like, is he going to catch up to her? What's like,
and I guess my big question was, okay, so did he jump through that door? Because what was his reason for jumping through that door? Was it because he's still like looking after himself, and he knows like she has the power now, he wants the power, so he's going to figure out how to get the power from her? Yeah. You know what I mean? Or was it more Mobius, you'll never make it, but I can go follow, like, was he, kind of feeling kind of way with the TVA, right? Yeah. And so was he kind of trying to help Mobius because they have become friends of some sort? And so that was why he was like, I'm going to go after this guy because you'll, if not, we're going to lose him, right? Like, that's always the trope that you get is like, if I don't do this, we'll lose them forever. I have to take that chance, and so I had that moment of, is he jumping through this door, chasing after her for that reason? Or is it purely for his own selfish reasons? Like,
I think it's because he knew he blew it.
Or that he just didn't want to face the repercussions of being told.
Exactly. Yeah. Because Mobius told him, like,
yep,
act like your life depends on it. and then kind of looked at him like, because it does.
Yeah, right.
I honestly think it's a little bit of both. I think it's self-preservation. I think it's trying to help Mobius, but also he's helping himself.
Yeah.
Like he's up to something. He's got a plan. And I think that what we're going to see next episode is the point in the trailer where you see the two of them sitting there with like they're on some planet with like the purple.
Oh, where everybody thinks that's Natasha.
That was Black Widow. Yeah. And I mean, her hair looks just like her from behind. So I totally, like, I said it too. I was like, it's Black Widow, or I said Enchantress or Lady Loki, because I knew the stuff was going around. But yeah. And she knows where the TV or the timekeepers are. So I think that's where she's headed. And so Loki followed.
Oh, that's right. We forgot that big plot moment where they find Hunter, and she says, I told her where the timekeepers are. Yeah. So we have this. Now, what do we know about the timekeepers? Like, are the timekeepers really a real thing? Or is it like, I kind of have this like Wizard of Oz, don't look behind the curtain situation going on in my head.
With Renslayer's comic book background, Judge Renslayer's comic book background, I find her a little suspicious.
I do too. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, she's suspicious. And so in the comics, it's the last director of the TVA that creates the timekeepers. In the show, they said that the timekeepers created the TVA.
Right.
So I'm curious to see if they just switch the backstory, which can happen, or if that means that's what they've been told and it's really Renslayer all along, like Agatha,
Okay.
Actually, I wonder if they'll introduce Kang, because one of the timekeepers happens to kind of look like him.
Well, and Kang is the villain for which movie coming up?
Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Yeah. So again, like the point of these movies or these shows are to somewhat set up what's coming next in the MCU. And so I could see, and obviously at the end of this, when they set off all those reset charges, the timeline went crazy, and we have the multiverse of timelines.
Of madness.
Happening. Right.
There were so many places. Like, what was that about?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to play into the Doctor Strange movie coming out, right? And so I don't know that will get 1000% wrapped up by the end of this. Like, that's the chaos that we're going to be dealing with. That's going to lead us to what Shang-Chi comes first, and then Multiverse of Madness, I think, after that, right? I can't remember.
It's Shang-Chi Eternals.
Yes. So like, I feel like this is, in part, it's going to be one of those things when we finally get to those movies, we're going to be like, y'all remember Loki, and we'll all go, oh yes. Okay. But yeah, I loved this episode for a lot of reasons. I loved the writing. I loved the dialogue. I love the interplay between Mobius and Loki a whole heck of a lot. And what I like is that Mobius likes Loki, but he doesn't trust him, and he knows not to, and he's smarter than that. And he even said, I'll zap him myself. The guy's kind of annoying, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I think it would hurt you if you had to get rid of Loki, because I think you kind of like the guy. I mean, what's not to like, right? So everything about this one was just really well done. And again, director Miss Heron, beautiful. Well, just all the snaps, all the claps for you, because
yes,
I am digging what they are giving us in these episodes so far. All right. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to say, Julia, about Tom? Because you've always got something. What was your favorite Tom moment in this one? What did you like? What did you pick up?
Oh, when he put on the jacket. that was so good. And just I also really loved when he smiled at when he encounters the hunter as the variant.
Yes.
He smiles at him and he smiles back.
Yes. I love that too. Absolutely. Yes.
And then the shushing in the TVA when he was reading out loud, kind of mocking the report.
I think that was my favorite.
Yeah,
oh no, they were captured.
There were so many good episodes. And it was, I don't remember where I posted this morning because I've posted multiple places, but it really was a great palate cleanse from last week.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because last week was really heavy. And this week was heavy too, but I feel like we got more context, more, I don't know, we got more of something that we needed. Of course, then they had to punch us in the gut again with the revelation of Ragnarok to Loki, which was,
Yeah, that was awful. Yep, agreed.
I mean, I feel like every episode's going to make us cry in some way. I don't know. But the whole thing was just, it was a delight. It was brilliant. I loved it so much.
Ashely, anything you stood out to you that you loved?
Yeah, I like the whole him reading the file and mocking the TVA. I actually really like the metaphor too when he destroyed Mobius's poor salad. He's like, don't. Oh, don't.
Oh, we got to see Casey again.
Yes. I love that part. I'm excited to see where and when, I should say. Maybe it's when, not where. When and where and when they end up next week.
Ashely and I got to see these as screeners, so we have been sitting on this for 2 weeks, but now we're just like everybody else. Yeah, now we're just like everybody else watching at 3 a.m. With this whole, craziness unfolding in front of us for the next 4 episodes. So it's going to be fun. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. And, as I like to say, it is no fun to fangirl alone. So I do appreciate you guys coming on the podcast. I'm going to put some links in this show notes for anyone who wants to read more about Lady Loki. And Ashely's got her Easter eggs. We've got some quotes. We've got some memes. We've got parent show review. If you're curious, can your kids watch this? Which I think there was some drama over the weekend over Loki being appropriate for kids, and I don't understand it. I definitely can see. Yeah, there was something online. I don't know what was going on, but I can definitely tell you this, that just in general, if your children have seen and understood most of the MCU, then watching this show is pretty much on par with a lot of the MCU. In some ways, so far, it's been less. There's been the fights aren't as graphic or as gory or anything that we have seen in some of the previous movies and such. So that's just a general terminology to that. But I will tell you that I have been watching it with my 10-year-old, who is very precocious, very bright. She clicks and she picks up on a lot of things. She had a lot of questions with Loki, which I struggle with just because I'm like, just watch the show. It'll all make sense. But my point being is that as this very smart, very bright, very quick 10-year-old, she still was like, wait, what? Someone needs to explain this to me. So we had to do some backtracking. We had to do some explanations. And when I, said, oh, well, did you catch this? Did you catch that? Then she'd be like, oh. But I think the whole concept of this, of timelines and time changing and jumping ahead and going backward and what they are fixing and what they aren't fixing could be somewhat confusing to younger children or to a child who's just not able to focus or pay a lot of attention, because it's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts in these shows. Yeah. So that's my quick parental guide for you. But I have more if you want to get to the more of the details on the blog, but I'll link that in show notes as well for you guys. And we will be back next week to talk about episode 3 and find out where Loki takes us halfway through and find out if it is indeed Lady Loki or if it turns out to be somebody else. Hopefully they'll tell us next episode and we'll go from there. And hopefully Julia and Ashely will be able to join us because I love fangirling with you guys. So, yes. All right. Well, join us next week, guys. And thanks again for fangirling with us. Yay. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.